From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Thursday, November 14. Top barristers say abolishing cross-examination of alleged rape victims prior to trial would tilt the scales of justice against defendants. The landmark legislation proposed by the Victorian government aims to prevent re-traumatisation of alleged victims, but some silks say robust measures are already in place. That exclusive story is live right now at theaustralian.com.au. Australia's corporate watchdog says it'll surveil super funds after it was revealed one fund failed to pay out death and disability benefits worth millions of dollars. In today's episode, what's going on at Cbus and why it could be a problem for the government.
I don't feel like my husband would have stayed with them if he had known this was going to happen.
This is Karen Redhead, a mum of 3 girls from Perth. She's speaking with The Australian's reporter Mackenzie Scott.
Because it did feel to me like they were purposely delaying things. I felt like it was making it excessively difficult and hard.
Karen's husband, Jamie Bell, a fire sprinkler fitter and the family's breadwinner, died in 2022 after a 3-year battle with a rare form of cancer.
And my case looked simple because I was the executor of the will, I was his only ever wife, the only ever mother of his children. So it was like the most easiest case. And I was also listed as a beneficiary on his Cbus account.
Cbus is an industry super fund with just under 1 million members, working mostly in the building and construction sectors.
How long did it take them to pay you out?
In the end, it was just over 10.5 months after he died.
On Tuesday, it was revealed Cbus has left thousands of its members in the lurch. Many of them are grieving families like Karen's or people with disabilities.
Oddly enough, there's a whole lot of admin when someone dies that you don't realise that there is. This was something I didn't think would be as hard. And having extra things to deal with in that time is really difficult. It's a time when you really want your life to be as simple as possible. Like, it's impossibly hard, and I don't think it's anything anyone could imagine.
The Australian Securities and Investments Commission, also known as ASIC, is taking Cbus to the federal court over allegations it failed to pay out thousands of death and disability claims worth $20 million for more than a year. The regulator is also alleging Cbus was aware of the backlog, but failed to take the necessary steps to fix it. Plus, it says Cbus's trustee breached its legal requirement to notify ASIC of the issue within 30 days of it coming to light. That means some of the country's most vulnerable people could still be waiting for their entitlements.
It's as bad, I think, as we've seen, really, and it's from a fund that's already in trouble on several fronts.
James Kirby is The Australian's wealth editor and the host of the Money Puzzle podcast.
There are quite literally a string of regulatory issues now emerging with Cbus. APRA is also looking at what they call questionable expenses, I'm quoting those words, and they're also looking at links with CFMEU. So there is a storm, basically, of issues now swirling around Cbus.
Last December, Cbus filed what's called a breach report to ASIC after being pinged by the watchdog. In that report, the super fund claimed its members were waiting on about $20 million in benefits. But ASIC alleges Cbus got it wrong, and the real figure could be up around $1 billion.
Well, we listen to the regulators pretty carefully, and they don't often do this, but if the regulator actually casts doubt on the estimate of how many people, and more importantly, how much money was due here and didn't get sent out to people, then we'll take them seriously. So we'll have to think that the amount in question here is a lot more than we were given to believe at the start by Cbus. Most people don't pay attention really until they begin to worry about their money in the fund. That's what people really care about. So the issue with Cbus and this particular scandal is it is to do with money. It's not some obscure issue or some political bun fight at this big super fund. It's to do with money that people were owed and the period of time they had to wait for that money. And linked with this is that just recently, and it's not a coincidence, that on the money front, on the financial side of things, one of the big ratings group, Morningstar, recently downgraded the Cbus from average to below average. And that's an embarrassment, I think, for a top fund like this. But it does tell us that the issues at Cbus are now becoming financial.
Cbus apologised for the bungle, saying it was sorry for the delay in processing claims made by bereaved families and people with disabilities. And it says it's cooperating with the regulator in hopes of resolving the dispute outside court. Plus, the $94 million super fund says it's put mechanisms in place to clear the backlog of delayed payments and pay compensation to its most severely affected members.
There is no way out now for Cbus because though they will say that they are cooperating, and if they are, it will be a fresh start for them because clearly the ASIC people, the regulators, say that they weren't cooperating up until now. And really, basically, between the lines, what they're saying is there was no good reason why this money wasn't handed over to the people that were due the payments. So that's a real issue for them. And I think one of the outcomes of this story will be that people are starting to realise, especially people in big funds, that they're on their own, that the big funds are something of a law unto themselves. And when things go wrong, they don't tell anyone that things go wrong. To the extent that they inform the public, they just inform the people who are affected. And that's not good enough. When you're talking about an industry that's now 3.5 trillion, there's 930,000 people alone inside super. These are enormous, enormous funds. And once upon a time, they could get away with this sort of thing. And I think now they're front and center, that everybody has to pay 11.5 cents in every dollar you make. By law, has to go into one of these funds. It's just not good enough that there isn't a regulator right on top of this. And one of the problems is that the funds have become so big. They're big fish in a small pond. There's different regulators doing different things. And basically, it falls between the cracks. And that suits big funds just fine until it's sorted.
On Wednesday, ASIC warned Cbus might not be the only superannuation fund mishandling members' entitlements. The watchdog's deputy chair, Sarah Court, said it's conducting deep dive surveillance of other super trustees in light of the allegations against Cbus.
She wouldn't say it unless she had some evidence from their earlier work that it is an industry-wide problem. If the system could allow Cbus not to pay people the money that they were due, their own members, then of course similar issues will lurk inside other funds. It's completely deductive that that would be the case.
Coming up, what Wayne Swan's Labor mates think about this brush with the corporate watchdog. Wayne Swan has been the Labor Party's president since 2018. He's also the chairman of the under fire super fund, Cbus. He's been an outspoken critic of badly behaved companies for much of his career in politics and in the corporate world.
When companies are rorting the system, they give a green light to everybody else to get in there and to do the same. Now, the business community in Australia claims to be a group of honest, tax-paying corporate citizens. Many are, but some are not.
When news of the Cbus scandal broke, many of Swan's Labor caucus colleagues backed him in, saying it wouldn't be necessary for him to step down. But others suggested the former Treasurer should appear in front of a Senate committee to answer questions about how and why millions of dollars in benefits were withheld from grieving families and people with disabilities. Coalition Senator Andrew Bragg is chair of the Economics References Committee and deputy chair of the Economics Legislative Committee. He told The Australian he's open to it, saying Wayne Swan has never shied away from a public debate in the past. Treasurer Jim Chalmers, who counts Wayne Swan as a mentor, has been reluctant to weigh in.
Now, those ASIC allegations are before the courts now, and the standard practice, which I'm adhering to today again, is that we don't comment on matters before the courts. that would be an inappropriate thing to do. But I'm a strong supporter of our regulators. Where they find issues that concern them, they should test them, and that's what's happening now.
Some have pointed out the contrast between Labor's dogged pursuit of other corporations currently facing legal action for alleged misleading conduct, like Coles and Woolworths.
Broadly, I think people feel that Wayne Swan has a degree of distance from the situation itself.
Sarah Eisen is a political reporter with The Australian.
Often chief executives are the ones who really handle operational sorts of things and who are often held responsible, whereas chairmen or chairwomen are a bit further removed. So for that reason and for a few others, including that members of the Labor caucus and the union movement have felt satisfied with how the whole thing has been handled so far, that there hasn't been a huge amount of appetite for Wayne Swan to step down, even temporarily, while the investigation by ASIC into Cbus takes place. However, there have been a couple voices who said it's not even about it being Wayne Swan's fault. It's simply about distraction. And distraction is the last thing Labor needs right now. So that's why Wayne Swan, in the view of some Labor people I've spoken to, should step aside temporarily to avoid any chance of distraction just a few months out from an election. And when Anthony Albanese is really struggling to land the reset that he's really been trying to land in recent weeks.
Sarah Eisen is a political reporter with The Australian, and James Kirby is our wealth editor and the host of the Money Puzzle podcast. Public sector pay has surpassed private salaries for the first time since 2020. That's according to the latest wage price index figures. You can read our experts' analysis right now at theaustralian.com.au.